voice is loud enough. I cannot speak louder than this, and I shouldn't. I want to speak about an interesting concept. The title of tonight's episode is Many Doors to Knock On. And so, I would like to say that this cosmos, this universe, this world of ours, due to the nature of us arising as individuals, we find opportunities and pathways accessible. The ancients knew that the mind was not them, because the concept of the mind, the self awake, an awareness to self, it had two. There were mysterious dimensions. The unknown moved man's mind before man took ownership of it. You see, I find that in the subtitle I speak about multidimensional self-projection. I have wondered that existence has become apparent to itself, and one moment of experience through the evolution of our history has divided into many subjective points. What that means is right now, to be honest, if you really want to tell the truth, you see, you cannot say it. It has to do with how life is just present in a life. There's a level to your intelligence which has to do with how you're being, and there's levels of intelligence which mainly are self-generated, which have to do with what you do. Okay? So what I'm trying to say here is that one cake of a directed moment of experience was divided. It was cut up into different ways. Every human being you see, they are dividing the world in many ways. They don't even recognize it. The subconscious has already held the blade. What I'm trying to get to is that human beings are projecting their senses of self ideologically, subjectively, and because they're doing this, their attention is in many worlds at the same time. That's what memories are. There are moments where the world was a certain way and you were a certain way, and now that certainty echoes in the distance behind your heart. The value of the moment. There's a known value to every moment and an unknown value. I find every human being is really, their attention is drawn by what is known. We seek knowledge because, in some sense, we want to know things, and to know things is to be things. That's something, when in some sense, uh, the Christ said, "Know yourself." In Christianity, that those words find us, "Know thyself." The thing is, when you go to know yourself, you see there is nothing to know, because the knower is it's like the questioner is the answer. The question is the answer. It is a detachment from a dualistic, for a search for a treasure in a dualistic mode of living. You eventually tap into the non-dual, and then the unknown realigns your knowledge, but it realigns it not in accordance with the story. You see, it's as if like the wind hits the person, but the person, like, internally can feel they're being caressed by the winds of God or something. Like the mind can animate things endlessly. For me, it's like layers of intelligence. So one on some, it's as if your mind had to first be the world, and then you could be an idea of yourself. The only reason we can speak about phenomena is because we are aware beyond it. So the thing is, this is the cool point. I feel that there's many problems in the world in 2019, and most of them are due to ignorance. But I find in 2019 I am alive in a cool moment of history. Let me tell you why. Because it is where our past attempts at knowing what this living world is will feel insufficient. It's as if the old world is breaking, and whether we like it or not, a new one is coming. And this new one, whatever it embraces, it will incorporate as its nature. That's the danger of thinking you're just a natural being. What I'm trying to communicate is that I can ask you who you are right now. Mr. Within can ask you who you are, and you may give an answer. However, that answer is this moment's answer. And as we realize the changing ways of the world, we cannot lie to ourselves. You see, I've had moments where, of intensity. Literally, I was in a situation, with certain people, and I had to act quick. I had to, my alertness was speaking louder than my kind of desire, and so I had to. It's like there's certain moments where life really wakes you up, and there's some moments. There's some moments where, how can I tell you? What I'm trying to say is that sometimes physical reality drives the moment. Sometimes objective reality leads your moment of existence, and sometimes subjective reality. But you got to be careful about the subjective more than the objective, because the subjective can trap and overrule what all the objectivity means. One wrong thought entering the system of a person, it's like we don't treat thoughts as if they are like we don't treat thoughts as if they are good or bad on some level. We treat them as whatever, like however way they were born. You see, for me, something that really opened up dimensions to my articulation of the present moment was the fact that I started to recognize the animateness, the sense of alivehood I see in my biological atomic cells that make up my physical body. Do you know? I could see that same animation in other things. And so you see, of course, children have this. This is why the child can hold a teddy bear and feel like it's hugging its best friend. It is projecting itself into the object and receiving it back. You see, I kind of debunked Shintoism for myself. Okay, I'm having problems with the audio. What I was saying is that I debunked Shintoism. And what I mean is that in Shintoism, they saw the body as a vessel for various souls, as if like what this world of ours is simultaneously on the other side of the coin, it's another world where it's as if a highway it's as if a highway of souls is kind of moving behind the eyes of the being. It's like, you know, so with that kind of notion, with that idea, I wondered about it and I came to recognize the power of the self. The self, first of all, exists to be infinite. You're not, you're, how you define just how commonly how this evolutionary human being defines itself. It defines itself in accordance to continuity. If I ask you what's important for you, it's probably stuff that you want to continue in this life. But you have to have an over-analysis of all phenomenology to truly come to an honest world. You see, first you gotta find an honest world to live in. After you find that honest world, then this is where something fascinating happens. Other modes of your own, how you exist to yourself, activate. It's as if like before you would look at a sign and not know what it means. Now you see the sign, you see what it very like what the words mean, but you now wonder about what the words mean to the overall. You see, you can have infinite feedback loops, infinite ways where conception can be broken and conception can be rebuilt, you know? And trust me, it's like we can get overloaded with data. We are advanced, multidimensionally, kind of self-sustained beings. In some sense, the same way the thought of you exists. It's like the thought of you and the thought of the world are in the same room of your mind, therefore implying a sort of momentary presence of their existence. You see, language is our best bet. Right now, I find the whole civilization should be like, oh my god, we're not as evolved. Technology is giving the illusion of progress. It is giving it very incredible illusion, but people are not realizing, rather than us physically, biologically, having an intimate relationship with the surface of our planet, with the natural world. Trust me, in the next, it's like a vacuum cleaner. In the next 100 to 200 years, it's as if the species is being possessed by a technological box. It's kind of like we are caging ourselves in holograms of truth. This is why after some point, like I used to, like you asked me a couple years ago, man, I had some nice beliefs, I can tell you. You know, it like in 2000, to be honest, it truly, um, 2011, if you asked me anything, I would have such firmness of conviction of my subjective reality. I was convinced my mind was it. You know, I felt what I saw was what I saw, and that was the flaw of the early steps of the seeker. You're jumping. You're jumping to image after image. Eventually, you will stop, and the images come to you. The relationship with karma is an intelligent one. Intelligence gets you out of bad karma. Yet this intelligence doesn't have to do with some mechanical approach as if I find that life oscillates between ordered dimensions and chaotic dimensions. This poet named Rumi, he says something incredible. He says the good and bad are like good and bad, like the notion of good, what is good, and the notion of bad. They're like two wings of a bird. It's as if the mind requires chaos in order to advance. So you need change. So we cannot ignore a changing universe. More than we should identify as creatures of form, we should identify as creatures that are constantly changing form. Because we are changing form, literally the cells of your body every what do you call it, like every 2 weeks or something, the cells of your body get replaced as your body grows. Okay? So what I'm trying to say here is that we are the change. We are not something changing to something sorry. We're not something going from somewhere to somewhere else. We are moments of change pretty much. And whether we like it or not, regardless of how much the person is inspired by efficiency or inefficiency. You see, the bad guy and the good guy, both of them feel they're justified to do what they're doing. Both of them have stories where the other person has to be the victim. So I stepped out of language. It was very casual. It's as if literally like I left the room, I left the state where my world since my childhood till that moment was just kept by language. Language would bother me. Like people would say things and those words I would suddenly react to. But later on I realized, whoa, what am I doing reacting? because not those people, anybody who has ever spoken to me, does not have my eyes. And I do not have your eyes. That's the magnificence of it. If I could see what the audience was seeing, there would be nothing to say. We are world builders and world bringers. You can, just like you can add spices to your food, you can alter any state of consciousness by the nature of how you move your attention. Now, if the person is untrained, the untrained mind wants to psychedelically shift itself towards truth. People want their sensory perception to get extreme, go to the extremes, and then they feel like they're seeing something true. The greatest wisdom I find is to find contentment with change and befriend the laws of the universal sector. When I say befriend, I mean pay attention to how attention is being the moment. It's so simple and magnificent. Once you find it, you will be in bliss pretty much the whole day. Because you are not a creature of of your body anymore. Let me tell you the structure. You stop being a creature of thought. Instantly, you have stopped being a creature of body. If you're neither a creature of body or neither a creature of thought, you become a creature of the unknown. And this is the edge of the humanity's knowledge. This is the apocalypse at the educational system. It will eventually dawn on them because it's an unavoidable fact about how the world is working. I mean, think about it. What can educational systems teach? What can knowledge, what kind of books does the world need when every moment is requires a different dance, different approach. When I have every time in this lifetime I have gotten angry, I have experienced an animal. What I mean by that is literally the animal instincts have come into some focus, conscious focus. You see, when something physically, when there's objectively, when there's turbulence, we call that pain. Subjectively, when there's turbulence, we call that suffering. On one level, existence is just, this is how it is. On another level, you're like, okay, 4 billion years of evolution, and in some sense, we have a species, a civilization, just creatures that have become civil enough to be able to create global networks of advancement of the whole thing. So for me, it's like I am in some sense instantly when I realize this moment that there's many doors you can knock on. There is a freedom unimaginable because it is the freedom that has allowed imagination to be. The wonder of the mind detaching from any structure or story to the natural world, therefore rendering the wars and the guilt and the games of gods and men void. That means it's like those people who truly understand God, they understand why emptiness exists. They understand what it means to be here and not be here. They understand what it means that there's a civilization. Do you see, civilization was an intention. It was, you can even say playfully, it was like as unique as an extraterrestrial intention in the mind of a terrestrial being. So let's say you hear the words multidimensional self-projection. There's something interesting about that idea. You see, imagine the first moment where this, in the history of in the history of the evolution of the human being, imagine the first moment where this creature, it could see itself in some reflection, in some place, and objectively acknowledge itself as an individual. It's as if like you see it in kind of like dogs and cats when they sometimes look at the mirror, they can't tell, they can't decide whether it's themselves or not. For like puppies and kittens, they can't decide what they see because that means the consciousness has not separated. Rabindranath Tagore, this Indian polymath, he has this quote where he says, "You cannot cross the sea by merely staring at it. You cannot experience an advanced civilization by just staring at it and waiting for extinction. We rage and rebel against extinction through the authentic, honest, and great advancement." When I use the word great, that surpasses all modes of thought. It's as if the word great is the greatest word that exists. This is why in religions you see the God is in some sense revered as the greatest. And what is greater than the cause of all phenomena in the objectively where we see cause and effect? You see, here's a fascinating thing. People think there's cause and effect, but don't realize the idea of cause and effect is being observed in an instant. The whole idea. You see, imagine that when you say a word, the word hovers in front of you as an image. But this image, it's like if you were to imagine, like you went in your backyard, you saw a tree, and imagined like this kind of glowing canoe moving between the trees at night. It would be like as if in that moment there's no canoe, but your eyes saw a canoe, your mind's eye saw a canoe. Where your mind's eye sees, now there's many theories on it. The one I in some sense hold and entertain for now is that I believe from our foreheads, literally like a 3D, like a light hologram, like there's a projector lights, there's something projected. It's as if your third eye is a TV behind your eyes. And that TV has to do with your collective sense of being by nature, because you see the story of the world has started from individuals. That's why we say history, his story, your attention makes the final decision, to be honest. And the thing is, there are certain attributes that can be it's like you don't change, you let go of that thought's existence in your moment. And only those who have remained honest, think of it this way, honesty is every child's nature because their mind begins by trusting the world. So it's like, regardless of how cruel you are with the world, the reason there's a conscience is because a part of your mind is also being the world. It cannot be cruel to itself. Self cruelty uh, is ignorance to the true self, you can say. I want to tell you the story of Guru Padmasambhava. Guru Padmasambhava is a bodhisattva, a sort of Buddhic figure who, at the age of 8, I'm saying this extremely casually, but this is the story. At the age of 8, just an 8-year-old version of him manifested. It's as if, like, the divine will of the cosmos was like, all right, Guru Padmasambhava, you don't need to live the first 8 years, just manifest here. Okay, let's continue with the story. My attention was just caught off guard. This child, enlightened child at the age of 8, Guru Padmasambhava, he manifests in this plane of existence, and it is said that the first thing he does is he just instantly, as if the first acts of existence, this being is wasting no time. He's definitely not from around here, And so Guru Padmasambhava, he starts enlightening, as the story says. Uh, and Guru Padmasambhava, of course, this has to do with Tibetan Buddhism. It's another way of saying Guru Rinpoche. But Guru Rinpoche is like the all underlying consciousness. It's like the oversoul's personality. And Guru Padmasambhava is, of course, he's the man. He's the story. He's an individual. He starts teaching these water spirits that were beside this lake that, from a lotus, at the age of 8, he just manifested. The story says that there's a king and his like entourage passing by strangely, coincidentally, in that instant, and the king sees this like kind of young 8-year-old kid by like this lake, kind of like, I don't know, enlightening water spirits, and like the king's like, oh my god, I'm gonna random kid's gonna be my son. Like, this is the best king story. This is why kings always adopt like kind of abandoned children. And so what happens is the king adopts Guru Rinpoche, and long story short, Guru Rinpoche grows up and then does some certain unique things and is exiled. Literally, he's told to leave the kingdom. So at the age of 30, he's gone on his journey, and this is where the true story I wanted to tell you happens. All this has been kind of like backstory. And so The story is Guru Parmasambhava. Imagine a man in his 30s. He's walking and he suddenly goes by this river. And he sees this beautiful girl who's there, but he doesn't know that she's a princess, okay? And this is a princess who like tried to escape the kingdom in that moment. Like she had to like get away from where she was held in. And so this princess is by this river, and Guru Padmasambhava arrives, and an enlightening conversation happens between the two, and the girl's like, whoa. And so what happens is Guru Padmasambhava is a bodhisattva, guys, don't forget. Like, and what happens is that suddenly there's a spy. There's there are there's a spy, and this spy sees that the princess is talking to some stranger, and she's like, "Oh my God, this princess is having like is making deals outside of the kingdom or something." And he goes and tells this to the king, and the king suddenly just gives the command, and suddenly Guru Padmasambhava and the princess find themselves in front of the town in the square where everyone is there. And suddenly there's soldiers bringing firewood, literally like putting like firewood on the ground everywhere and like getting ready to burn. What happens? Too many thoughts for one moment. um, the king suddenly shouts at all the townsmen who've gathered by the firewood, and he says, "This man was seen near my daughter, you know, and he will burn, and any man who comes close to the princess will, in some sense, share the same fate." And this savage kind of ruthless king is like, "I will not be, played with any, like, how can I tell you?" He kind of shouts. He shouts like as if he's like basking in his kingly authority and like doing whatever he wants. And so what happens is, Guru Padmasambhava looks at the princess, who a sense of terror has come. And because she's spoken to Guru Padmasambhava, she knows what kind of person Guru Padmasambhava is, but the kingdom doesn't know. And the princess runs to her father like, "Yo, stop this madness." She begs the king, her father, to stop doing this. But strangely, Guru Padmasambhava is there, and the king is staring at him as if like, "How dare you? You will burn. You will die now." Like the king is staring at him like that. And Guru Padmasambhava his eyes find the princess, and he just looks at her, and he smiles. And so he automatically, before the king commands the executioner to take him to the firewood, he just automatically walks in the middle of the firewood. It's as if he knows what the moment wants. And he goes. He goes in the middle of the firewood and he sits down in this lotus meditation position and he starts just meditating just in just normal way, as if like some person just chilling on the ground, you know? And so the king is like, okay, and the people are like a bit kind of, it's odd for them. And what happens is the townsfolk are savage, you know. The townsfolk are like, yeah, burn him, burn him. It's as if it's a public event, you know. So let's get engaged. What on some level was seen as crowd savageness was just efforts of engagement with public activity. Good people can become bad if the world is bad. Bad people can become good if the good world is good, if it's a good place to continue. The flames burn. There is savage roars from the crowd as if like burn him again, continuously. And so something strange happens as the crowd watches like an activity to see what remains, and the king is like, okay, it's like I tell him this situation. Suddenly, the king noticed, he hears gasps before he leaves. He hears gasps in the townspeople, and it's as if all the people are getting shocked one by one, as if a wave of a new reality is hitting them. And so, what happens? Guru Padmasambhava is still there meditating, and it's as if the fire never touched him. It's as if the fire moved itself for him. And so the flames burn and the wind blows the ashes, and there Guru Padmasambhava, he stands up as if nothing happened. And the king and townspeople is so shocked that the story is kind of funny. The king suddenly says Guru Padmasambhava has to marry the princess. And in that moment, when that happens, it's as if Guru Padmasambhava, his walk into the moment continues. For him, it's I think the kind of state of consciousness Guru Padmasambhava was in, it's as if for him, death did not exist, and neither did temporal life. Guru Padmasambhava sat in the flames of a cruel world. And as he remained true to his nature, the world had to remain true to his nature. And once you do this, it's fascinating what happens, especially for a social entity, for a social creature, you know, a creature moving in rivers of the minds of mankind, the minds of men. For me, words are just words, but some words behind them, there are worlds. And when you really look into that world, you recognize just professionalism of living. There's some people who it doesn't matter what they do, they're just professional people. It's as if I've seen these kind of people from my childhood. It's as if the person was not just aligned morally, it's as if their inner reality had no turbulence and neither did their outer. And so it's as if you saw a true being. You see, I find even the most evil person, like, it's like that girl from Suicide Squad was like the Joker's kind of lover or something, right? So what I'm saying is even evil has a soft side, you know? Even the most ruthless kind of vicious king has to go sleep gently in his bed at night. Like, literally has to sit and wait until he falls asleep, right? This is why I say we have to be playful. Because there are not just outer economical and social and cultural classes. There's also internal ways where the sense of self has kept itself. And so what happens is many people feel there's a sort of conditioning. Even I, in some of my talks, I've said it's like it's not just your parents that spoon feed you baby food. The world spoon feeds you data and stories of itself. And so it's up to the being to process it. And in the middle of processing the data of the world, you suddenly wonder who's processing. And then the present moment is rediscovered through a silence that never needed the conceptual strictness of duality. You breathe as a boundless, inconceivable moment to yourself. And you watch how the unknown, sometimes this attention, the known and the unknown can be even seen as like these wasteland, not wastelands, these like vast fields, as if there's on one field it's like one season, on another field it's another. Anyways, I hope this talk has been helpful. Um, One last thing to say about the title. The many doors to knock on, also when the thought came to me, it was kind of also recognizing how many ways of looking at your world in new ways there's accessible. Literally, it's endless. You see, it's as if like, okay, you can look at a child in Africa in poverty and helplessness, being like kind of destroyed by the lack of care of the world for itself. Okay, like you can see that. But that child, even though externally, yes, you've been dealt a bad hand, but at the same time, internally, you choose. You choose what to do. You choose how the life moves. Because regardless of how the external, this is why the argument for free will is a brilliant and complex one that philosophers have always been fascinated by. Because the moment you acknowledge that there's something beyond your free will, then you, in some sense, how can I tell you, you are choosing that to be beyond your free will. Because you are choosing it, it's as if your free will is somewhere still around. So in some sense, the whole world, it's like either the world is being your mind or your mind is being your world. And I'm saying that we oscillate between these. We're never in just one way. There's some moments where it's like literally when you have to do a presentation or a public talk or something, that's when in some sense, how can I tell you, you You speak as if you have internally been moving mountains since the beginning. Your inner reality is no longer afraid. It's as if you have a conversation with fear and you negotiate. You negotiate to see the realism. You see, there's types of moments where you need fear to actually be there. Like without fear, it's as if you won't have your animal instincts suddenly heightening your alertness. The attention is a fascinating thing. I mean, like that sentence is wrong. Like what I'm trying to say is your attention is. Are you ready for it? It's where God comes from. That this like this aftermath of a sort of silence recalibrating how every sound you ever heard in your childhood reassociates into meaning and structure in accordance to how what sort of person you are in that moment of being. You know, you're not just one kind of person, you're many people. You know, some have even gone so far to consider that every moment is its own unique parallel reality. We find in the wisdom of Heraclitus, this, I believe, Greek philosopher, ancient Greek philosopher, definitely Greek, like, I don't know if it's from Athens, but anyways. Um, no man can step in the same river twice, and it is not the same river, and it is not the same man. So what he's trying to say there is that this is where creativity comes from, not because you're something getting something, because you're nothing observing all that is. You become the contentment after the wind of your direct experience brushes aside stories attached to emptiness. You realize you could have always looked at the world differently, and now, if you choose to, you can. But you have to care to realize not all lessons are known. You should not assume that there's a solution to everything, in, you know, based on one sentence. You know, it's like the moment you start having beliefs is the moment where you have started worshiping language. And so you're trying to keep an image from, you're trying to keep a tornado from taking this kind of picture in your hand that is the belief, and the tornado is just time. It is how change is the stories behind it. Be free before you could not be. Much blessings and namaste. I want to share this quote from Albert Campbell before I end off. He says, "In the depths of winter, I found within myself an invincible summer." This French philosopher. Find that invincible summer as how your attention is present as the moment. There's an elegance, a self-intuitive elegance that just it comes naturally. It's as if you have an animalistic instinct and you have a sort of solar instinct, a sort of spiritual kind of instinct. But this spiritual instinct is not conceptual. It has to do with a sort of collective presence of. It's as if like spiritual people at the end of the day, they're just saying it's all one moment. You know, it's all that's why oneness has become like uh, kind of everybody's talking about oneness. You know, and that's the hilarious thing. No one can talk about oneness. It is as fascinating as how the symbol, the word for God, is like the moon, where the light of the sun is hitting it, and you can't see the sun because you're seeing the moon. You cannot see the true source of the light, and therefore you see a reflection. Thanks for tuning in, guys.